What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is your college basketball Monday night betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are my co-hosts BJ Cunningham and Mike Calabrese. Gentlemen, both of you just talking about how little sleep you get, and it's only going to get worse as we approach March. BJ, I'll go to you. What's going on, brother?
Not much, my little sleep is on my own doing because I'm staying up until 2 a.m. watching Rune lose to Rublev in the Australian Open in a 5-set tiebreak. So it seems to be my own doing. But yeah, no, we're not going to get much sleep until we get through March here. But guess what? It's going to be a lot of fun as we go along this ride.
Mike, how's it going, brother?
Going good. I also did it to myself on Friday night, that New Mexico Boise game, instant classic. Two teams that I would love to see in the big dance. Hopefully the committee gets that right, come March. But it was an 11 p.m. tip-off on the East Coast. So game that goes to overtime. I was excited, but also just kind of dreading the Saturday morning wake up. But it was certainly worth it. Some great coaching at the end of the game. Boise State executing the rarely seen half-court pass, timeout, set up the inbound from the sideline, got a perfect look for Jen Hart, and he ends up nailing the 3 cent at OT, which ended up cashing my over. So it was smiles all around in my household. Just another great Mountain West game.
Never in doubt, the over. And yeah, that was an amazing play. For first, the execution to get the timeout, the inbound pass up, but that inside out action to get the wide open 3 was awesome. So yeah, I was glad to see that go to overtime. It was a great game. All right, but last week we did was our first episode of the season, little different than what it'll be going forward. I think I mentioned this on both podcasts last week, but normally today and going forward on Mondays, we'll record in the morning. It'll be about the Monday night slate, key takeaways from the weekend, and then we'll cover just like we did with the Big Ten last week. We'll do a conference a week, just buying, selling, general thoughts. So we'll do the Big 12 tonight, which is I think a good place to talk about after this weekend. And we have Kansas Baylor, which we'll talk about tonight. But let's get into first before we get to rant of the week. One key takeaway from the weekend. I'll go two. LSU is bad. I just want to get that out there. I bet LSU against Tennessee. They're losing. They're the opposite of Alabama. Like Alabama just keeps winning and winning by margin. LSU is not even close. They are broken. But my biggest takeaway is a team I've done a complete. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think they were bad, but a complete 180 on is Marquette. I think Marquette might be really, really good. And Shaka Smart deserves a ton of credit. I was just tweeting about most underrated coaches and best overall, best offensive, best defense. He might be the most underrated. And I know people give him a lot of love as an underdog. He's always great as an underdog, which is usually a sign of you're a great coach, in my opinion, from a betting standpoint. But I mean, I think Marquette might be legit, Final Four legit. Shaka Smart deserves a ton of credit. So really impressed with what I've seen from Marquette. I was not as high on them as the market, faded them a few times, and it did not go well. So I bumped them up a ton from what I've seen recently. Mike, any thoughts there and any takeaway from the weekend?
I know we're going to touch on the Big 12 more as we go through the episode, but sometimes it can be overblown, the narrative of this is the best conference, top to bottom, anything can happen. They are just absolutely living up to it. At the very top with TCU not only winning at Phog for the first time, but winning going away. So that just demonstrates that it's really wide open at the top and, a team can seize that mantle. But then on the bottom, like Oklahoma State winning against Iowa State, these teams in the bottom 4, we mentioned in the last podcast that if everything goes right, they could sneak into the tournament. And they could be a real headache as a 10 or 11 seed from a power conference. So I think that just validates it for me. It was a Saturday filled with more uncertainty, but not necessarily teams stubbing their toe, more so some teams elevating themselves, either Oklahoma State from the bottom or TCU, to be a legitimate threat to win the regular season title. So I've just been impressed with what I've seen through the Big 12.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Big 12 in a bit. But yeah, we were talking Friday about TCU, and we're like, well, we can probably wait on them, but maybe that was not the right move. But BJ, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, my big takeaway from the weekend is just something, and it's something that you do every single week, Stuck, is just how important situational spots are in college basketball. You look around Ohio State, just beat Iowa so badly, coming off a 5-game win streak, Iowa coming in on a 4-game win streak, Arizona beating UCLA, even Temple beating Houston on Sunday. You know, we talked about we just don't have a team in college basketball you can really trust right now. I mean, it's kind of becoming Alabama as being the one team that I think that I can actually trust. But it came to me because I was watching the end of the and that'll be my rant here in a second. But I was watching the end of the Virginia Tech Clemson game, and I was just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was just staring at the score bug. And I was thinking, I was like, maybe somebody is new to betting, like they're coming in, you know, maybe in one of the states that just came online, like Ohio or Maryland. They're just starting out betting college basketball and listening to this. And you look at that score bug and you see Clemson's the 19th ranked team in the country. They're 7-1 in the ACC, taking on Virginia Tech, who's 1-6 in the ACC. Why are they 1-point favorites? That makes absolutely no sense. And obviously, we look from the advanced metrics and everything like that. We know these are two pretty even teams, and Virginia Tech was obviously in a good situational spot, Stuckey. And of course, they melted down at the end. But it's one of those things that, again, these situational spots of teams that are coming in on these losing streaks tend to play more desperate, tend to play better than these teams that are riding their high coming in. So it was just something I was thinking about as I was watching. I was like, you know, if I was very new to betting, I would be like, this makes no sense to me. I'm going to take Clemson. But as we know, we talk about in this podcast from different metrics, like whether it be KenPom, shot quality, synergy, that these situational spots and teams that tend to be on losing streaks, sometimes they're just going through bad shooting regression. Sometimes that positive regression is going to come back after those losing streaks.
Yep. Yeah. And it also, that game perfectly illustrates the point that, I mean, 99% of the people listening to this podcast and that are bettors out there don't bet more than, you know, $500 a game max. So you can bet early and you should have a lot of outs, and getting the best of the number is so important in college basketball. And that was perfectly illustrated with that game. I think it closed a pick. It was +2, +1.5. And so those things add up over time. So, you know, if you're in a legal state, take advantage of all the offers that are out there. And then you have multiple options to try and get the best number, and you can bet early. It's not, you know, there's these things, lines are coming out the night before. Hop on them. If you like a side, like that's going to make, in the end, the difference between a half a point or a point might not seem like a lot, but by the end of the season, those add up, and those make the difference between a winning and losing better. It's the easiest thing you can do. Mike, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I certainly agree. For anyone who's sweat out a college basketball game in their entire life, you know, how confident are you for a 19-year-old to make the front end of a 1-on-1? So 1 point is a lot. I'll certainly take it whenever I can get that value. In terms of like other things that fired me up over the weekends, we talked about Purdue. It's like a running joke on social media. They're going to get bounced in the second round by like Creighton or somebody who can shoot from three. But I was just frustrated. Even though I didn't have a play on it, I was like, okay, this is a game that they should lose to Maryland. They shoot 20 for 52 from the field, 2 for 13 from three. And then Maryland goes ahead and scores 6 points in the final 7 minutes of the game. Now, I know that Purdue is like borderline top 20 in defensive efficiency, but they gave up 13 offensive rebounds. Maryland only turns over 9 times. It's just, it's not fair to Purdue. Like if Purdue was, you know, lined up to be a 3 seed or something like that, I would probably be in their camp and rooting for them as a team that plays a different style of basketball, you know, channeling through their big. But as a 1 seed, it's just so frustrating to me because they can win games like that. And now that's 2 in the last 3 games. They had the game winner from Edie the other day. So just a very frustrating game to watch. Even with my money on the sideline, I was like, this will be the one that they drop it to the Terps and they can't get it done. So I don't know. The Big Ten in general, I think we're just waiting for a team to rise up and overtake the Boilermakers, but I just probably don't even see it happening until March.
Yeah, I'm impressed what I've seen from Indiana lately and some of the adjustments that Woodson has made. And I mean, TJD is playing out of his mind, and they're going to get healthier eventually. So they went from like, before the year, they were Final Four darling, to then everyone wrote them off, to maybe they're the team that emerges. Purdue, a couple things on Purdue. I faded them again yesterday. I also faded them the game before, which didn't work out. They're still on my fade list. 2 things on them though. Edie is impossible to officiate. On both ends of the floor. Like you could call a foul on him or whoever is trying to guard him every play. I don't know how you officiate his games. A lot of variance there. But Purdue, keep in mind, Purdue, like they're probably going to be a 1 seed, so yeah, they'll Edie will have 55 points against some 16 seed and just dunk it 30 times. But if they play an 8 or 9 that can press them, that's I think they'll get in a lot of trouble there. You saw their young guards run into some trouble against Maryland when Maryland decided to press yesterday. And then if Purdue doesn't turn it over, they run such good offense, and then you have such a mismatch with Edie that if you don't force a turnover, if you just make them get into their offense very late, you have a lot better chance of guarding Edie inside and or making them rush a shot. So keep that in mind. I would love to see give me Memphis as the 9 seed and take them against Purdue and their athleticism. That's a matchup. So that's something to keep in mind with Purdue. Because I saw the cracks there when Maryland started the press. But let's get into rant of the week. I'll start. I'm gonna kind of go off the radar here. I'm gonna go a Twitter rant. I don't know if you guys see this. These fixed game bots. Do you see these things? Fixed games. Please DM. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't. Please explain it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you go to any of my tweets, almost any. So if I tweet out something, there's a 99% chance within 2 minutes, there is going to be an account that, I just pulled up a tweet. Yep, and here is one. Oscar Souza. Good morning. The bet is placed for today. The information is very strong. We going to have a massive win. Direct message me, all interested. Don't lose this one. So they claim, and all their accounts, they're all bots.
So you're sure it's a bot? Because that sounded very authentic to me. I mean,
yeah.
I'd probably in DM.
They reply within if I tweet out something within seconds. It is like making my Twitter experience miserable because I love interacting with people. I tweet out and I'm like, oh, I got 3 replies to this tweet already, and then they're all fixed games. It's so annoying. So that's my rant because it's making me so mad. But 2 things I want to say. Then you have people that are selling picks that are saying they're professional bettors. You have people selling picks that say they have fixed games. Listen, if someone has a fixed game, they know fixed games, the last thing they're doing is publicizing it and selling it to you for $50. And these people that are saying they're professional sports bettors that have a site, where they're charging $4.99 a day or something, if they were professional, there's some exceptions. But for the most part, if someone's saying the professional sports bettor and trying to sell you picks for $5 a day, they're most likely not a professional sports bettor. So just be careful with states coming online. Twitter is just getting more and more toxic. The fixed game bots, though, are so annoying. So if you ever see them, please, I know that everyone has more common sense than this, but just in case, no one has fixed game information that is selling it on Twitter. I promise you. So that's my rant. I blocked them all. They just keep coming. It's like an army of bots, and they just create more and more every single day, and they just reply to me, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting all this engagement. I must have a great tweet. Nope, it's just fixed game bots. So whoever is doing that, I hate you. And
they're not
please,
in this
Twitter.
They're not in this country. I can guarantee you.
Please, Twitter, take care of this problem. It is driving me insane. So that's my rant of the week, Mike. Actually, BJ, I know that you had something queued up.
Yeah, I mean, just Virginia Tech melting down was not fun. I needed them to close out a nice round robin. Speaking of not making free throws, they just couldn't make 2 free throws, and then of course, Hunter Tyson hits the 3 to win it. So, but they turned the ball over again in the final minute as well. Just typical college basketball meltdown. So that was basically I had a decent Saturday for the first time this year. So I can't really complain that much, but that could have closed out a really, really nice day. So that would be
at least they didn't call the foul. So I had some +1.5. It's sorry if anyone had pick or I had some money line too. So they had ran a really great set to get a 3 that was airballed, but luckily for those of us with +1.5 and +2, they didn't call a foul on the potential putback, which with 0.1 seconds left. So thank you for that. But Mike, rant of the week.
Yeah, just really that Purdue, that was my mini rants about how they're just going to continue to get away with this because they can win. There's, the expression, win your clunkers. They certainly have won a bunch of games without playing their best basketball. And I'm just frustrated because at this point, there's really no way for us to get to March and have 4 number 1 seeds that everyone feels really confident in. At this point, like I'd be satisfied with 2. And then Houston yesterday just goes ahead and craps the bed against Temple. So I don't know what to believe anymore. I would love to be able to have some kind of bedrock team at the top of the AP to be able to say, like, okay, I know the brand of basketball they're going to play. I know their top 3 scoring options. I feel great about all of that. And we're just not there at this point, and it's almost the end of January. So hopefully this comes to fruition soon. But at this point, I think it's probably more advantageous for us to discuss the teams like Indiana, who you're just pointing out, where it's like, let's, hitch our wagon to the teams that are A, getting hot, and B, getting healthy at the right time, and just, kind of work our way through the season that way.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, the Houston loss, because it kind of got lost in the shuffle of the NFL, and Houston losing at home to Temple. Like the trust, we talk about the trust tree. Who can you trust?
We said they were going to roll through the American.
Yeah,
they don't even
they're not going to play anybody in the
whatsoever
AAC the rest of the way. Come on.
Yeah, in my trust tree, they got to fall out. Who is in the trust tree now? Is it again
Alabama? Right?
Who went Alabama on the road? Beats Missouri by 21. I get that Missouri is not the same team without Kobe Brown, but it's a road conference game. It's back-to-back road conference games. After beating LSU by 40 or whatever they won by, they go on the road, 2 conference games, win by double digits in each. So yeah, it's Gonzaga, by the way, loses at home in conference. Like how often does that happen? Yeah, my trust tree
actually
is...
I saw it. It was the first time they've lost at home since 2018.
Wow.
It's been 5 years.
Yeah, my trust tree is like them, and I mean, can we say Marquette? I mean, Marquette doesn't really have clunkers. Like if you look at what they've done this year, I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself now on Marquette, but yeah, it might just be Alabama, and it just shows you how wide open the tournament is going to be. All right, let's talk some Big 12. We saw the just absolutely stunningly dominant win by TCU, which was the headline of the weekend. Baylor pulls out a very close win at Oklahoma, who can't seem to buy a close win. And then, you have Iowa State. Somehow they lost to Oklahoma State. They were up big, and Oklahoma State came back to win. Just close games, and that are coming down to the wire. And there's just, like we said before, there's no easy gimmies. Texas Tech was up 8 with 10 to go and completely melted down. They look like the only team that will miss the NCAA tournament, although West Virginia needs to start racking up a couple more wins. But it's who am I looking to buy and sell in the Big 12? I'm looking to sell Kansas State. I tried to do it against Texas Tech, and they had a late run. I'm a huge Jerome Tang fan, but I think that they're running a little too well right now. They're also 5-0 in overtime, so I think that they're 4-0. Excuse me. They beat Kansas in overtime, Baylor in overtime, West Virginia in overtime, and Nevada in overtime. So I think that this is probably the peak of the market value on Kansas State. You have to remember, in that Kansas overtime game as well, and look, I was on Kansas State. Kansas missed so many free throws in almost every single wide open 3 in that game. So I think that there's some regression coming for Kansas State. And I'll bring up and I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on the Big 12, and I'll jump in when warranted. But TCU is a very interesting team in that. And look, I know that they blew out Kansas basically from start to finish, but if they're a team I like, I'm going to be looking to live bet, either buying or selling, because if you are missing shots against them, they are so elite in transition that they can put a run on you quick. But if you're making shots, and then obviously you're scoring, and then you're making them score in the half court, and they're a team that really struggles to shoot the ball, and they'll take their best offense in the half court is offensive rebounding. But if you're making your shots, and then you're not letting them get in transition, then they're going to go cold, and there's going to be a lot of runs back and forth. So game dependent, matchup dependent, even within the game, I'll be looking to sell TCU after some of these runs, because they're like an NBA team in transition. And if you're cold and there's long rebounds. Man, I mean, they're just, the ball isn't hitting the ground in transition and they're scoring. So those are a couple of my thoughts, and just an absolutely loaded conference. Mike, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to require one more loss to get their odds in my favor, and essentially into a place where I'd like to play the Jayhawks long term. But what I know for a fact is that Jalen Wilson is having a career season. He's taken that step up to Conference Player of the Year level. He's averaging nearly 21-9 on the season, and back-to-back monster games where he scored 30 plus. Like, it's not his fault. Like, the team, in my eyes, when you look at the bottom line on ESPN, oh, Kansas fell apart. Yes, TCU played a great game, but in terms of their foundation, it's still there. The question to me is, can Grady Dick pull his way out of this, shooting slump? Because he's been shooting so poorly in, 3 of his last 4 games that it's killing them. They need something to be able to balance it out on the perimeter. So that's one of the reasons why I probably lean to them tonight against Baylor. But long term, I just think they're going to be able to get that right because they have this Conference Player of the Year to build around. So I think in terms of the recency bias and people overreacting a little bit, because how often does Kansas lose by that much at home, I still think this is a good opportunity to maybe buy back on Kansas. I still have faith in them. And then we'll get into it with Baylor. I have some deeper thoughts on the Bears at this point.
PJ, any overarching thoughts on the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the future odds right now, you spoke about TCU. They're setting a 10-1 to win the Big 12, and their upcoming schedule is actually pretty easy. So they've already played Baylor, Kansas, and Texas all on the road. So they're reversed. They're going to get them at home, and their toughest road game is going to be in Hilton. But upcoming, they have Oklahoma, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, and then Kansas State on the road. So it's actually pretty favorable for them to potentially get a few games back here if they can win 3 in a row here against Oklahoma, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, setting up a huge showdown against Kansas State. So again, in a Big 12 conference where we say is just absolutely loaded, and it really wouldn't surprise us if a team, whether it be Iowa State, Texas, Kansas, or whoever goes on and eventually wins this conference. And if you look at the standings, I mean, TCU is 2 games back. So it's not like it's a big time ask for them to overtake Kansas. At 10-1 is a decent price for them, getting a lot of favorable home matchups going forward. So if I'm buying a team, it's probably TCU right now. And I agree with you. If I'm selling a team, it's going to be Kansas State, a team that just, I mean, I don't think Texas Tech scored for like a 5 or 6 minute stretch there in the second half and just completely melted away. So, if I'm buying a team, I think it is going to be TCU because of again, like you mentioned, Stuck, since they live so much in transition, the variance is very, very high for them. So they could completely crater and potentially, fall out, or they could overtake these teams and potentially see those type of performances we saw against Kansas on Saturday. So I'm buying TCU probably at 10-1 to win the Big 12.
Love it. Also, you have the Shahada Wells coming out party against Kansas. And if they add him to the mix and he can play like that, I mean, they'd become even more dangerous if he's going to contribute. And I mean, back in 2021 for UTI, he was like a 40% 3-point shooter. And that's really what they're missing. If he can provide some shooting and play like he did in Lawrence, I mean, look out. So you're 10-1. I love that. And it's probably going to be a sweat to the end.
Yep.
Let's I guess we'll transition right into Kansas Baylor tonight. Let me pull up the current odds. I think this opened as Baylor -3 at home. It's down to Baylor -2, total 149. This game's at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Should be a good one. I took the 3 with Kansas personally. Bill Self, to me, is the best overall coach in college basketball as far as like in-game adjustments. I mean, it's free points out of a timeout. Him as an underdog, historically, he's been great. He's even 11-3-1 against the spread as a underdog against top 5 opponents, 17-8-1 against the top 10, 24-17-1 against the spread as an underdog against the top 25. I also think Baylor still has some flaws, especially on defense. It's just not the same defense that we've seen. You can get to the rim on them. There's just some communication issues still. They're still trying to figure out who they are. Look, their guards are incredible and can catch fire at any point in time. I just think that this game should basically be closer to a coin flip. So I happily took the points, and what I think is gonna, again, it's gonna come down to the wire. You'll get a desperate Kansas effort here. And look, I know Baylor pulled it out against Oklahoma, but I think they made they went 4 for 4 from 3 in the final 2 minutes, including 3 from a 22% 3-point shooter. Kind of got lucky in that game. I think this is Kansas. I've been looking to sell Baylor. It's just not the same team. I know the talent in the backcourt and they can get there, but I think that there's still some issues on that defense that Kansas can exploit. Mike, I know you had some more thoughts on Baylor. What are you thinking about in this game?
Yeah, the eye test, I felt the same way about Baylor going into Big 12 play. And what's changed? They played 3 good teams in the Big 12. They're 0-3 against Iowa State, TCU, and K-State. And 2 of those losses were at home. And then they get 4 wins against the bottom 4 teams, Oklahoma State, Tech, West Virginia, OU. So not that much has changed for me. I think this is what I was just discussing. I think this is recency bias on KU getting smacked around at home. So anything in plus territory, getting a point and a half to go ahead and grab that. That's what I'm on. I missed the 3 points at the open, which I think was advantageous for you, but I still like, Kansas plus money. I'll probably just play them on the money line.
PJ?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I like Kansas. You can get a plus 2.5 out there right now. And I think it's something you already said, Mike, is that Kansas is a tad reliant on Grady Dick to be good from 3-point range. He's been
cold the past couple games.
3 for 16 from his last 2 games when he's shooting about 44%.
Which is what happens with freshmen to a certain degree.
Right.
You're going to have these lulls and these valleys, but I just don't see a player of his caliber and shooting prowess to stay cold. So hopefully, if he shoots, if he goes 2 for 5 or 3 for 7 from 3, I think they win this game. I think he's that critical to their game plan.
Right. Even if you look through Kansas, it's basically him and Jalen Wilson are basically their only 2 guys taking a ton of 3-pointers, or at least have over 100 3-point attempts on the season. And the big thing with Kansas defensively is they are an elite team at defending the 3-point line. And so when you face a team like TCU, who plays a lot in transition, doesn't take a lot of 3-point shots, that's where you maybe could have a recipe for disaster. Like they're top 35 in points per possession allowed on both catch and shoot and off the dribble 3-pointers. Baylor's very, very reliant on taking a lot of 3-pointers. They're about 45% of their field goal attempts are coming from behind the arc. And if you look through their shot quality numbers, like they're about average in terms of shot selection and getting open 3-pointers. So really it's going to come down to is if can Kansas keep Baylor off the offensive glass, because Baylor is a top 10 team in offensive rebounding percentage. So, but I do think this is a good matchup here for Kansas. Good spot for them. And like you guys already said, some recency bias here for Baylor. So I'm with you guys, like Kansas plus 2.5.
Yeah, I think full consensus here. It's take the points. I think it'll be like this. This has final possession written all over it. Last team with the ball might win it. And yeah, I think that, I don't know. Look, I'm not a NBA draft expert, but I think I saw somewhere that like Jalen Wilson was projected in late first round. Like, how is that possible? Like, this guy, he can play as a pure shooter at times, and he's one of the best players in the country at getting to the rim.
I think the age factor gets
he's a junior
in NBA. They're just like, well, in NBA circles, he's like geriatric by draft selection.
God forbid he's 20 years old instead of 18.
Gotcha. Yeah, he's an incredible watch. He can literally do it all and put a team on his back. And he plays with incredible energy, and like I just love the way that he plays. I've been so impressed with Wilson this year. But let's move on to Monday night. And for those of you who listened to the podcast last year, we're bringing it back. We got some SWACtion. So we have MACtion in college football, but we have SWACtion. And this morning when we were preparing for the podcast, it brought just joy to my heart when Mike brought up SWACtion, and BJ jumped in and said he has some SWACtion. So we have 6? I think there's 6 SWAC games tonight. I don't know where any of them are on.
Don't worry, I got you covered.
Yeah, let Mike take this.
Prairie View game is on that. But Mike, you're like itching here. I gotta stop talking and let you just jump in. What's the SWACtion play tonight?
So you're gonna fire up your computer, you're going to go to the World Wide Web, and YouTube Live is going to be hosting a little game between Southern and Mississippi Valley State. Going to take you live from Itta Bena, Mississippi, Northwest Mississippi. Is a little hidden gem there off the Delta.
The Delta Devils.
The Delta Devils, the home of the Fighting Jerry Rices and Deacon Jones. Great, HBCU football program. Awful college basketball program. I'm not breaking any news here. They've been to the big dance since 2008, where they scored 29 points against UCLA. They go ahead and fire their coach in the offseason, bring in George Ivory, who was an alumnus in the 80s. He also coached Arkansas Pine Bluff for 13 years. His win percentage, 34%. I don't know how you coach anywhere for 13 years with a win percentage that low. Mississippi Valley State carrying on the awful tradition, second worst team shooting inside the arc in the country. But here's the game inside the game for me. All these extra possessions for Southern. The Delta Devils, 345th in defensive rebounding percentage, 351st in turnovers. So what that means is all these extra opportunities for Southern to cover a game that's under, at least in my opinion, a key number of 10. I couldn't believe that I saw Southern minus 9.5 because they're the top team in the SWAC. What's interesting, I think the reason why it's holding right around this 10-point threshold is that despite losing by an average of 18 points per game, Mississippi Valley State's 14-7 against the closing number this year. So they've been real good against the spread, but I think this is the time to hop off of the Delta Devils bandwagon. I'm going to go ahead with Southern, who's also been good against the spread, 12-5 ATS, one of the few HBCUs in the whole country that can shoot from three. They're 57th in three-point percentage on the year. And the other element of it is not only is Mississippi Valley State really sloppy with the basketball, Southern takes it away, forcing 18 turnovers a game. That's fourth nationally. All five starters average over steal per game. So I love Southern in this one. And I'll see you at the Facebook, or excuse me, the YouTube live comment section. It'll be me and 45 of my best friends just yucking it up during this game. And hopefully it's not a sweat down the stretch.
Well, I'm going to be joining this comment section. So you can find me in there too. And yeah, I think that's the key here is that Southern does turn you over. I think they're 13th in turnover percentage on defense. The only teams that turn it over more on a percentage basis than the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils are New Orleans, IUPUI, Delaware State, and Florida A&M, just the dregs of college basketball. And how did I still want to know how Texas Southern, speaking of that, beat Arizona State early in the season. I was like, oh, Texas Southern, and then I think they've won two straight. But
yeah, the Pac-12 did not have a great non-con schedule against the SWAC because Southern also beat Cal Berkeley. So cover your eyes on that one, West Coast basketball fans.
Yeah, Pac-12 could that be just a two-bid league?
Is it a mid-major league at this point? I agree with you. This is rough for the Pac-12.
All right, BJ. I know I don't have any SWACtion on the table, but I know you have. So you have a SWACtion total.
Yeah. Speaking of Texas Southern, they're playing Alabama State tonight in beautiful Montgomery, Alabama, and I like the over 139.5 points, mainly because I was looking through Alabama State's shot quality numbers. I don't think I've ever seen this. They should be finishing at the rim 13% higher than they have been on the season because they are literally dead last in the country in 2-point field goal percentage. They're shooting 37.9% from inside the arc. I don't think they can continue to shoot that bad. They also get to the free throw line at a decent rate. When they get there, they're shooting 82% in conference play. So maybe they can get some points there. And defensively, they are dreadful. I mean, they're 353rd in points per possession allowed in half courts. They're third to last in the country in points per possession allowed at the rim. And that's basically where Texas Southern gets all of their shot attempts from. Texas Southern loves to do a lot of isolation sets. Alabama State's 347th in the country at defending those. Texas Southern is, in conference play, they're 8th in points per possession allowed. So they haven't really been that good. They're very poor at defending at the rim. These are also two of the top three teams in the SWAC in terms of being the lowest average possession length. So I think we'll see an up and down game. It's just going to come down to whether these teams can make these shots or not. So I'm going to take an over 139.5. And I expect these teams to shoot very, very well from the field, hopefully.
Okay, there you have it. SWACtion over, and we're laying it with Southern. You can catch us in the comment section on YouTube Live. What time's that game? 8:30?
8:30 p.m. Eastern time.
Late one for me too. I believe it's either 9 or 8:30. Let's see here. Yeah, 8:30. I mean, that's the hot time in the SWAC. That's when you got to get multiple screens going.
Yeah, so if there's a commercial break in Kansas Baylor or halftime and you want to check in on what we're doing, I expect to see all of you in the YouTube live comment section. All right, before we get out of here, one final order of business, and that's our best bets for Monday night. I'm going to take Virginia Tech. I think the line is starting to creep out. I don't mind taking the money line here, but if you can get 2 or better, I would lay it. Obviously, this is desperation time for Virginia Tech, and I just think they're so much better than the record indicates. They have Hunter Couture back now, and I mean, look, they lost by 1 at Clemson on a last-second 3. They lost in overtime to BC. You know, they were playing without Couture for a while. They lost by 2 at Wake. They lost by 3 at home to Clemson. They lost by 4 at home to NC State. Like, they have been there. This is a team that it's an experienced team that basically was in the same exact spot last season. Very slow start in the ACC, and this is right about when they caught fire. I think the same thing is going to happen this year. Should be a raucous environment. I think Duke, still so much talent, still hasn't figured it out yet. And you know, they're living on the offensive glass, which is basically their best offense. One of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. But Virginia Tech can actually match them on the defensive boards. They're a very good defensive rebounding team. And I think the action that they run against this young Duke team on the other end of the floor, they will have some success. There's shots are going to start falling for Va Tech. I think this is just the spot here. The spot of spots for a desperate team. And it's crazy to say this could be a must win for Virginia Tech for their at-large hopes. Because if you look at the bottom of the ACC, there's not a lot of chances for our quality wins. You're playing Louisville. What's Louisville now? Like a quad 4 game. So this is a huge game for Virginia Tech season. I think it's a spot for them. So I'm going to go with the Hokies. Mike?
I'm going to go with an over in the Horizon League. I like over 152 between Oakland and Detroit in the Motor City rivalry. You're going to want to check on Jared Liddell's availability. He has a lingering back issue for Detroit Mercy. If he's a go, this is an absolute hammer play for me. These two teams combined, in terms of the totals this year, they're 23-15 to the over. In conference play, Detroit is averaging over 80 points per game. At home, they're averaging over 80 points per game. And you get an opportunity to watch one of the greatest scorers in the history of college basketball. Antoine Davis now is only looking up at Pistol Pete in terms of career points. He's an absolute bucket waiting to happen. He's averaging 33.5 points per game across his last 6, shooting 44% from 3 during that hot streak. And Oakland gives up open looks nonstop from 3-point range. They're one of the worst teams defending the 3 in the entire country. And a little bonus on the other side, Jalen Moore is a great point guard, not as good shooting from distance, but he can fill it up as well. I think he went for 25 in his last game. So I like over 152 here. I think this game could end up being played in the 80s. Horizon League basketball, pretty fun. And this is probably one of the best matchups if you haven't watched this season, if you want to get in on it just from an entertainment perspective.
Yeah, Antoine Davis now the NCAA career leader in 3-pointers made and attempted. And you know, his number 4 is Darius McGee, also currently playing for Liberty, who is also a bucket and can go for, I think he's gone for 40 plus 3 or 4 times in his career. So yeah, Liberty, I hope Liberty gets in the tournament. They're always a fun watch. And McGee is a flamethrower just like Davis, who could go for 45 on any given night. BJ, what you got?
Yeah, outside of any of the SWACtion pick, I don't really like much else. So I'm going to go back to Kansas plus 2.5. One thing we already didn't mention during that time is, you know, when Baylor played TCU, a high transition team, which Kansas can be because they're 35th in terms of transition frequency. I mean, TCU put up 88 points and 1.2 points per possession. So this is just an all-time great spot here for Kansas, getting them at a good number here at plus 2.5.
All right, good stuff there. As always, make sure you also check out the award-winning Action Network app and actionnetwork.com. We have tons of great content for today's slate and beyond for college basketball. And thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a review, 5-star review. You can say whatever you want. You can mention SWACtion if you're going to be in the comment section, but those really help us out. And we will do giveaways periodically. We'll do one here later this week if we get a couple 5-star reviews. So appreciate that if you can take the time and help us out. But that'll do it for us. The guys from the 3-Man Weave will be back midweek, and we will be back later this week to preview Saturday's college basketball slate. The hoops are getting good. Good luck out there, and we will see you soon. Cheers.